of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are grateful to the Secretary General and his Special Representative, Madam Patton, for the drafting of the report for the year 2021. We also wish to thank the briefers who have been invited. We believe that work to prevent and eradicate violence needs to be systemic, comprehensive, and account for the identified root causes of this scourge. The focus of efforts to counter manifestations of sexual violence need to result in long-standing and sustainable results. During armed conflicts, women and children are the most vulnerable categories of civilians. We believe that issues of preventing and combating sexual violence during all stages of armed conflict and in post-conflict situations is fully and chiefly within the purview of national governments. Measures adopted by UN bodies or civil society should need merely to supplement the efforts of states. We are troubled, Mr. President, by the information in the Secretary General's report about mounting violence against women and girls in conflict areas in Africa, Colombia, and Syria. Thousands of people contained in Syria in the Al-Hol and Rukban camps, which are under U.S. occupant control, endure violence, exploitation, and brutal treatment. They are cast aside and marginalized and destitute. Prostitution, theft, sexual exploitation of minors, trafficking in persons are rife in the camps, and unequal marriages are being carried out there. Mr. President, today, yet again, we heard unsubstantiated, baseless accusations against Russian military personnel who are carrying out their duty under the special military operation in Ukraine. We emphatically reject these insulting and baseless insinuations. Here we see a part of the unprincipled information war which is has actively been unleashed at present against the Russian Federation by Ukraine and its Western patrons. The actions of Russian field units within and without combat conditions are subject to uniform, stringent rules for all personnel, irrespective of rank or title. One of the objectives of the campaign to tarnish Russian military personnel is the concealment of real instances of sexual violence by Ukrainian radicals who have been perpetrating this against the residents of Donbass since 2014. For years, the OHCHR monitoring mission in Ukraine and other international institutions have been publishing reports about numerous egregious instances of beatings, electric shock being applied to the genital area, threats of rape, and forcible nudity against men and women who were accused of collaboration with the authorities of Donetsk and Lugansk. The detainees were denied medical assistance, and they were subject to death threats and threats of a sexual nature. These threats targeted both themselves and their family members. Hence, it is hardly surprising that we have been witnessing an acute uptick in instances of sexual violence in territories under the control of the Ukrainian government. We believe that these crimes need to be emphatically condemned, perpetrators need to be stringently punished, and they should not be passed over in silence, contrary to what some in the West may wish. Today, the action of the Ukrainian nationalist battalions, Nazi battalions, and the territorial defense units are carbon copy copies of the tactics being used by ISIL terrorists. This includes civilians being used as human shields, the placement of weapons in homes, schools, hospitals, and other civilian infrastructure objects. And at the same time, the bacchanalia of murder and humiliation of Ukrainian residents who are suspected of disloyalty to the regime is skyrocketing. Here are but some examples. On 7 March, in the Komunar coal mine area in Donetsk, DPR military personnel arrived to clear the territory of mines, and they discovered a grave with the bodies of 4 women. Upon formal reviews, determined that before their deaths, they were tortured and raped. One of the victims was pregnant. This is the area where the Aidar Nazi unit was located. On 28 March, the Azov Battalion Nazis entered school number 18 in Mariupol, and they tortured a girl there to death. Her mutilated body, with hands cut off, with a swastika branded on her stomach, was a shock to all who saw this. We mentioned this tragedy during the 11 April meeting held in this chamber. On 21 March, nationalists abused Roma who were fleeing to West Ukraine. They were undressed, sprayed with green dye, tied to lampposts, and accused of theft. On 3 April, in the center of Pavlograd, in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, territorial defense representatives undressed and tied a local woman to a lamppost. Police officers witnessing the incident did not intervene. Yesterday, concerned Ukrainian citizens placed a video clip on the web where police officers publicly beat a woman tied to a lamppost with a rod, having first degraded her by stripping her of clothing. I'm talking about facts which are accessible to all. I'm not talking about baseless insinuations. This heinous practice of public stripping, violence, and punishment is characteristic of medieval Europe, and now, unfortunately, it has become commonplace in Ukraine. The conflict in Ukraine has activated an industry of exploitation of Ukrainian refugees on the soil of European countries. Judging by existing information, key European Union agencies assess the threat of Ukrainian refugees being trafficked as very high, given the fact that in recent years, Ukraine was among the top 5 countries in terms of the number of human trafficking victims and sexual exploitation victims in European countries. And it would be naive to think that this situation would somehow change overnight. Mr. President, we call upon our colleagues not to keep silent about these alarming trends, not to keep silent about the evidence that I mentioned about these sexually based crimes perpetrated by Ukrainian soldiers. Thank you.
I note the statement from the representative of the Russian Federation, and I now give the floor